Our group is going to present Chapter 2, The Basis of Primate Sociality. Primates are social and they tend to create mate-bond relationships that allow them to form groups. Primates do this to create a defense against predators because we feel more safe when we are in group than when we are by our own. When an animal is terrestrial, the risk to be caught by a predator increases because they tend to occupy open habitats with fewer trees to avoid refuges, because then they will be trapped. Under these conditions, group size increases for protection, because individuals stick together and come to each other's aid when necessary. Moreover, living around other individuals has its benefits, but it also has disadvantages. These arise from three separate sources: direct, indirect, and free riding.
So, first we have the direct cause, which are the conflicts inside of the group, maybe because altercations about food or safest resting sites, and the direct cost increase as the group gets bigger. Secondly, we have indirect costs because more travel time has to be allocated inside of the waking day as group size increases in order to allow the group to visit enough food patches to satisfy everyone's nutritional requirements. And this means less time to do other activities. Moreover, travel consumes energy, so there will be problems because the ones who had traveled will want more food because of their effort. Travel also exposes the group to bump into predators. So, on third place, we have free riding because a primate group is an implicit social contract where everyone belongs to a collective solution against predation. That can be broken by free riders. They take advantage of belonging to a social contract but don't pay the cost. They have the benefit of being protected from predators but suppose a burden for the group. The direct costs affect mainly to females because all conflicts over access to food or safe refuges impact on female menstrual cycle endocrinology and may lead them to be infertile. These stresses tend to accumulate down the dominance hierarchy simply because lower ranking animals have more individuals who can harass them. When there is an excess on the stress level, the normal menstrual hormones are blocked and the result is an anovulatory menstrual cycle, which is a cycle in which ovulation does not occur and the female loses a chance to conceive. Monkeys and apes neutralize the stresses by forming coalitions that protect their members against harassment. The relationships that underpin these coalitions seem to involve two separate processes, the social grooming and the group size. An emotionally intense mechanism triggered by social grooming. Social grooming seems to work because it releases endorphins when it takes place. So this allows to animals that groom together to stay together long enough to build up a relationship of trust and obligation, which forms the second cognitive component. Moreover, there are other neurotransmitters and neuroendocrines like oxytocin, also called the love hormone, that are also released during these social interactions. So, the time devoted to grooming correlates with social group size in old world monkeys and apes. But this doesn't necessarily mean that animals groom more individuals in larger groups. In fact, in the most social primates, the number of animals groomed decreases as group size and grooming time increases. This happens maybe because as the stresses increase with group size, it becomes more and more essential to ensure that one's coalition work as reliably as possible. Monkey mothers who are under a lot of stress because of the feeding demands of their babies focus on their babies instead of in casual acquaintances.
But what do social bonds really involve? In humans, they appear to be primarily emotional, but this may be the reason for which it's too difficult to define them. Because we cannot express our emotional feelings very well, and that's why it's so difficult to explain the nature of bonded relationships. We can also distinguish between weaker bonds and stronger bonds, but we don't know exactly why this is. One measure that we can apply to both human and monkeys is how much time we devote to our friends. Some studies have proved that the time spent face-to-face is fundamental for maintaining the quality of a relationship, that can be friends or like a romantic relationship, and the emotional quality of friendships declines when friends no longer see each other as much as they had previously done. This finding is consistent with Sternberg's tripartite theory of love, in which he defines love in three dimensions: passion, intimacy, and commitment. Ignoring passion as a peculiarity of romantic relationships, The other two suggest that relationships have two key components: being close and feeling close. These two components seem to correspond perfectly to the elements of our dual process model of bonded relationship in primates. Being close is the need to be in a close physical proximity and emotional attachment that this produces, for example, like social grooming. And feeling close is the sense of being willing to do anything for their partner. For some comparative and developmental psychologists, this sense of feeling close involves some form of social cognition, and the best way to explain this is using the theory of mind, which is a state in which individuals recognize that other individuals have minds like their own. It also involves the ability to use words like intent, want, suppose, etc., which are also known as intentionality. There is a hierarchy of intentionality. The first order is all conscious organisms that know the contents of their own minds. The second order is two mind states, yours and the other person's. And then there's an infinite order in which, for example, you can understand a sentence like, I believe that you think, she supposes that he knows, which can go on and on. Humans are not born with theory of mind, and children usually acquire it at 5 years of age and then progress up through the levels until the 5th level, sometime in their teens, and usually adults vary between the 4th and 6th order. Mentalizing is processed in quite specific areas of the brain known as the theory of mind network, which involves parts of the prefrontal cortex and the two main areas in the temporal lobe, which are the frontal pole and the temporoparietal junction. Mentalizing tasks are more important than memory tasks, and there is a correlation between the amount of cerebral neural activity and the level of intentionality at which someone is working. The higher the level of intentionality required by the task, the more neurons they have to use. People who can work at higher orders of intentionality have larger orbitofrontal regions, and also these frontal parts of the brains are the ones which have evolved most recently in anthropoid primates. The orders of intentionality provide a quantitative index of cognitive differences between modern humans and other primates. It doesn't matter that we don't know exactly what mentalizing is in cognitive terms. The fact is that it provides a simple, reliable, linear scale of social cognitive complexity. Great apes can cope with a second-order intentionality, that they are not as good as 5-year-old children, but they are as good as 4-year-old children who are just getting the hang of it.
We're going to talk about primate social evolution. The analysis that Susan Schultz and Kit Opie made suggests that the most likely and the biggest change from the dispersed territories, individual territories, and solitary foraging led to multi-male and multi-female sociality and not into monogamy. In other words, animals that had previously reigned alone began gathered together in groups, presumably in response to the threatening of the predators. Species never returned to a semi-solitary state once they had formed groups, but they switched back and forth between the harem and multi-male states. But the really important finding here is that once the species have entered into the monogamy life, there's no way out from there. It appears that monogamy is a kind of cognitive sink, probably because the cognitive demands of the monogamous partnerships are so great that once the brain has get used to it, this cannot be easily undone. Monogamy requires the male and the female to be tolerant with each other but intolerant with all the members of their own sex, and in consequence they end as territorial, with each monogamous pair occupying its own exclusive territory. This intolerance of the same-sex individuals makes it very difficult to live in the same place, especially when they become sexually activate in the puberty. So, why monogamy? There are like 3 hypotheses trying to answer this question. The first one, biparental care, is more a consequence of the monogamy than a cause. Then the mate guarding by males is certainly the explanation of monogamy for the most part of the mammals, but not for primates, because male primates could defend their territories of several females if they wanted to. And the third one, risk, seems to be the crucial factor for monogamy to primates. This is females using males as bodyguards to try not to get their offspring killed. The infanticide risk doesn't disappear when there is a pair couple, and sometimes several females attach to the same male to have their offspring protected. For this reason, most powerful male protectors are more attractive to females than small males.
So this was our presentation. Thanks for watching.